Let me explain you how I got here before you pass judgment. After months of short phone conversations and sporadic visits, I believed I would finally get to meet my son in person on my 64th birthday. I got my hair done at the downtown salon, donned my beautiful blue dress, and even indulged in those awful heels that accentuated my legs. However, rather than a cordial reunion, I learned my true place in Michael's new life, and it was only the start. Wait till it takes on your last. Name if you believe that only strangers may betray you. Please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment indicating where you are seeing the tale before proceeding. Your assistance is crucial. It is said that a mother's love is eternal, patient, forgiving, and unconditional. I think so. That's what I experienced. After his sister Sarah moved across the nation to Seattle, I was there for my only kid, Michael, through every setback, every school project, every triumph, and every setback. When Michael was just 8 years old, his father decided he wasn't cut out for family life, so I raised him by myself in our tiny Chicago apartment. On my birthday, I woke up feeling the same sense of excitement in my chest. 64, living alone in my small suburban Chicago home, but full of optimism. Michael hadn't made many calls recently, said the finals for law school were really demanding, that he was occupied in Boston with matters involving his fiancée Vanessa's family. However, he would undoubtedly find time today. Even though he wouldn't be there to enjoy it, I prepared his favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, not the store-bought variety we used to purchase when money was tight. Old habits don't go away easily. We couldn't afford proper wrapping paper back then, so birthdays were celebrated with handwritten cards and modest gifts wrapped in Sunday comics. Michael now sent gift cards to shops I hardly went to and pricey, flowers delivered by strangers. At 10:17 a.m., the call was received. I recall looking at the time and assuming he was being thoughtful by waiting until a respectable hour to call. His voice was warm yet hurried as he responded, "Happy birthday, Mom." I could hear the commotion of what seemed like a coffee shop in the distance. After all, he had no intention of taking the day off to visit. Despite my dismay, I said, "Thank you, sweetheart." "How are you? How is Vanessa doing?" "We're doing okay. Excellent. In fact, that's one of the reasons I'm calling." His tone became ecstatic, as if he had been eager to convey news since he was a youngster. "After graduation, I have this incredible internship set up thanks to some efforts by Vanessa's father. It's with this esteemed Boston firm. It's just the corporate legal job I've been looking for." Even though a knot was starting to grow in my gut, I answered, "That's wonderful," with meaning. This news was beginning to sound more and more like a long-term agreement, and Boston was far from Chicago. "Is it your intention to remain in Boston following graduation?" "That's the strategy. We are looking at flats in Cambridge with the assistance of Vanessa's parents. According to her father, location is crucial in the legal field." Thinking of the house I was sitting in, I nodded as though he could see me. When the hospital where I had worked for 20 years was acquired, I used the settlement money to purchase the house. I had remodeled the house with Michael in mind, modernizing the study to serve as a home office for a young lawyer, just starting out in the field and ensuring that the second bedroom could be readily transformed into a nursery in the future. He went on, unaware of my quiet. "So listen. Next month's graduation," I interjected, wanting him to know that I had not forgotten and that I intended to attend his special day. "I've already booked my flight," I said. "I discovered a pleasant hotel close to the campus that is accessible by foot." "About that," he said in a cautious tone that made my stomach knot. "The ceremony has a limited number of seats, Mom." Unable to understand, I waited. "Michael, I just need one seat." He sighed. "I know, but..." And I could see him stroking his hair in the manner he did when he felt uncomfortable in a conversation. "Some very significant individuals have been invited by Vanessa's family. Some judges, her dad's legal colleagues, and others who may be of great use to my career. From California, her grandparents are traveling via plane." Slowly, then suddenly, the knowledge came to light. "You don't have my ticket." "It isn't that I don't want you there," he hastily said. "It's just that Vanessa's father has worked very hard to establish these connections for me, and this is a really significant opportunity in terms of my career." The half-eaten birthday pancake was solidifying on my plate as I sat still at my kitchen table. The spring light shone on my well-maintained garden, which I had created with the hope that my grandkids may play there someday. Finally, in a calmer voice than I felt, I answered, "I see. You'd be bored, to be honest, and it's just one day, Mom. These intellectual rituals seem to go on forever." He had honed his persuasive voice at debate club, and he was using it now. Additionally, the dinner that follows will be a formal affair at a club that Vanessa's father is a member of. It's all shop talk and networking. You wouldn't fit in, was the implicit warning that hovered between us. "Michael, when did you start feeling embarrassed about me?" Before I could stop them, the words escaped. "I don't feel embarrassed." He raised his voice defensively. "That is unfair. All I'm trying to do is leave a positive impression. I've worked really hard for this, you know. We've worked so hard," I corrected in a low voice. "Before Vanessa's family took over, I remortgaged this house to assist with your first year of law school." All of the things we weren't saying were contained in the quiet that hung between us. I remembered the Christmas before he met Vanessa, when we sat up late watching old movies like we used to do and he brought laundry home. How he had praised the changes I had made to the house, stating that it now appeared nearly opulent. I had been comforted for weeks by the pride in his eyes. "I appreciate everything you've done, Mom." "I do." His voice was softer now, conciliatory. "Look, we'll celebrate just the two of us another time, okay? Maybe I can come visit in the summer after the bar exam. Always after something more important." "Of course," I said, falling back on the pleasant tone I'd perfected over decades of putting his needs first. "That sounds nice." We exchanged a few more minutes of surface-level conversation before he had to go. "Meeting Vanessa for lunch?" he explained, and as if on cue, I heard a female voice calling his name in the background. "Got to run, Mom. Happy birthday again. Love you." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat at my kitchen table, birthday pancakes, growing cold, staring at the gift I'd wrapped for myself from him, a book I'd wanted, purchased with my own money, an old habit from when he was too young to shop for presents. I'd always told myself that motherhood meant sacrifice, that one day it would all come back to me in the form of a close relationship with my adult son. Now, on my 64th birthday, I was facing the possibility that I'd sacrificed for a future that would never arrive. My gaze drifted to the refrigerator where I'd magneted the graduation announcement he'd sent months ago. Harvard Law School, class of 2024. My son's name in elegant script. I'd planned to frame it and display it proudly in my living room. Now I wondered where it would go in the house I'd been planning to give him as a graduation gift. The modest 3-bedroom in a Chicago suburb that I'd purchased when Michael was in high school after years of saving every penny. The house I'd kept in perfect condition, updating the kitchen last year, tending the garden that I knew Vanessa had admired during their brief visit at Christmas. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't expected to call for years. "Margaret, it's Eleanor Hansen. Remember? How you mentioned your daughter was looking to buy in my neighborhood? I think I'm ready to sell my house after all." As I signed the listing agreement 3 days later, I felt something shift inside me. Grief giving way to resolve. My son had made his choice, and now I was making mine. Maybe it was time for both of us to learn what it meant to stand on our own. The for sale sign went up on a Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone was buzzing with notifications from my real estate agent, Diane. In this market, a well-maintained home in a good school district didn't last long. I had 3 showings scheduled for the weekend, and 2 more for Monday. "Are you sure about this, Eleanor?" Sarah asked when I called to tell her. My daughter's voice carried across the miles from Seattle, concerned but careful. Unlike her brother, Sarah had always been mindful of my feelings. "That house means a lot to you." "It's just walls and a roof," I lied, staring at the family photos I was packing away. Michael's high school graduation, Sarah's wedding, the twins as babies. "It's too big for just me." Sarah wasn't fooled. "This is about Michael, isn't it? About him not wanting you at graduation." I sighed, sinking onto the couch that had witnessed countless movie nights and homework sessions. "He didn't even try to fight for me, Sarah. Didn't even suggest I could at least attend the ceremony and skip the fancy dinner after. Just wrote me off completely." "He's being an ass," Sarah said bluntly. "Want me to call him?" "No," I said quickly. The last thing I needed was to be cast as the mother who sent the sister to fight her battles. I'm not selling the house to punish him. I'm selling it because I finally realized I've been living my life around a future that isn't going to happen. What future? I hesitated, having never spoken this truth aloud. I always thought Michael would come back to Chicago after law school, that maybe he and whoever he married would live here close to me, that I'd be involved in his life, in my grandchildren's lives. I swallowed hard. But that's not happening. He's building a life in Boston with Vanessa's family at the center of it. A life where I'm an afterthought. Oh, Mom. Sarah's voice softened. You could move to Seattle, you know, be closer to us. The twins would love having their grandmother around more. I smiled despite myself. I'm considering all my options. That's why I'm selling, to give myself options. After we hung up, I wandered through the house, really seeing it for the first time in years. Not just as my home, but as the vessel that had contained all my hopes and dreams for our family's future. I remembered the day I bought it 13 years ago. Michael was 19 and heading to Northwestern for his sophomore year. The settlement from the hospital merger had finally come through, and for the first time in my adult life, I had enough money to put a substantial down payment on a house. No more apartment living, no more sharing walls with neighbors who complained when Michael practiced his debate speeches too loudly. This is embarrassing, Mom, he'd said when I insisted he come to the closing. I'm not a kid. I don't need to be there when you sign papers. Humor me, I'd replied. This is a big moment for our family. Family. Even then, I'd been planning around a concept that existed more in my head than in reality. Michael had already begun pulling away, eager to shed the working-class identity that had marked his childhood. I paused at the entrance to what would have been his home office. The room I'd renovated last year with built-in bookshelves and a custom desk that would have been perfect for a young lawyer. The soft gray paint was still fresh, the morning light streaming in through windows I'd replaced myself. This house represented everything I'd worked for: security, stability, a legacy I could pass on. Michael could have started his married life here without a mortgage, saving for his future while building his career. I'd planned to move into a small condo nearby, giving them space while remaining close enough to help with future grandchildren. What a fool I'd been. The first showing was Saturday morning. I left the house spotless, fresh flowers on the dining table, and drove to a cafe where I nursed a single cup of coffee for 2 hours, scrolling through real estate listings in various cities. Seattle, near Sarah. Florida, where my sister lived. Or somewhere entirely new. For the first time in decades, I had no responsibilities tying me to any particular place. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. My phone rang as I was walking back to my car. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath before answering. "Hi, stranger," I said, aiming for a lightness I didn't feel. "Hey, Mom. Sorry I haven't called since your birthday. Finals have been brutal." He sounded tired but excited. "But I'm almost done. Just one more exam next week and then graduation prep." "That's wonderful," I said, settling into my car but not starting it. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks." There was an awkward pause. "So, Sarah called me." Of course she had. Despite my request, my daughter had always appointed herself the family peacemaker. "She said you're selling the house, is that true?" He sounded genuinely surprised. "Yes, it's on the market. In fact, I just had the first showing." "But why? You love that house. You've put so much work into it." I gripped the steering wheel, steadying myself. "Things change, Michael. I'm not getting any younger, and that house is a lot to maintain on my own." Is this because of what I said about graduation? Because I've been thinking about that, and maybe there's a way to work something out. "This isn't about graduation," I cut in, though we both knew it was at least partly a lie. "This is about me, making decisions for my future, the same way you're making decisions for yours." "What does that mean?" I closed my eyes, gathering my courage. "It means I'm 64 years old and I've spent most of my adult life arranging everything around what I thought would be best for you and Sarah. Now Sarah has her own family in Seattle and you're building a life in Boston. It's time I figured Out what I want. Where will you go? His voice had taken on a cautious tone, as if he was just realizing there might be consequences to the distance he'd created. I don't know yet. I'm exploring options. I started the car, suddenly eager to be moving. Maybe Seattle to be near the twins. Maybe somewhere warm for a change. But Chicago is home, he protested. All your friends are there. I almost laughed at the irony. Now he was concerned about my social connections when he'd been so quick to exclude me from his big day. Home is where you make it, Michael. You should know that since you've decided to make yours in Boston. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations. I was going to give you the house, I said finally, the words escaping before I could reconsider. As a graduation present. I had it all planned. You and Vanessa could start your married life here, build your careers in Chicago. I was going to get a condo nearby. Mom. His voice cracked slightly. I didn't know. No, you didn't ask. You didn't consider that I might have plans, too. The hurt I'd been suppressing bubbled up. You just assumed. I'd fit myself around whatever life you decided to create, even if that life didn't have space for me. That's not fair. Boston has the best opportunities for the kind of law I want to practice, and Vanessa's family connections. I know, I interrupted, not wanting to hear again about the Collins family's influence. You've made your choice, and it's a smart one for your career. I respect that. Now I'm making my choice. Another silence. This one filled with the realization that something fundamental had shifted between us. Would you have told me? He asked finally. About the house, I mean, if I hadn't uninvited you to graduation. The question hung in the air, impossible to answer honestly without causing more pain. Would I have changed my plans if he'd still wanted me at his graduation? Probably. Would I have eventually recognized the one-sided nature of our relationship anyway? Perhaps. I don't know, I admitted. But I do know that I can't keep living my life waiting for you to have time for me. I have to go, he said abruptly. Vanessa's waiting. We have dinner with her parents. His default excuse whenever conversations got uncomfortable. Of course, I replied, the familiar disappointment settling in my chest. Give her my best. After we hung up, I sat in my parked car for a long time, watching young families pass by on the sidewalk, mothers holding children's hands, fathers carrying toddlers on their shoulders. All those years ago, I'd chosen this neighborhood specifically for those scenes, imagining future grandchildren playing in my front yard. Dreams die hard, especially the ones you've nurtured for decades. But as I finally drove back to the house that would soon no longer be mine, I felt the first stirrings of something unexpected. Freedom. The house sold in 6 days. 3 days of showings, 2 days of multiple offers driving up the price, and 1 day of me sitting at my kitchen table signing papers that would end this chapter of my life. I accepted an offer $15,000 above asking price with a 30-day closing, and the option to rent back for up to 2 months while I figured out my next step. You're sure about this? Diane asked as I signed the final acceptance. It's a seller's market, but this is happening awfully fast. I'm sure, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. It's time for a change. Change? Such a small word for the seismic shift happening in my life. I hadn't told Michael about accepting the offer. Our conversation had ended awkwardly, and he hadn't called back. Sarah knew, of course. She called daily now, alternating between supporting my decision and suggesting housing options. Near her in Seattle, the twins would be over the moon, Mom, she'd said just that morning. And there's a nice condo complex for seniors just 10 minutes from us. Seniors? I'd laughed. I'm 64, not 84. You know what I mean. It's for active adults over 55. They have yoga classes and wine nights. I'd promised to look at the listing she sent, but something held me back from committing to Seattle. As much as I loved Sarah and the twins, I wasn't sure I wanted to build my new life around family again. What if Sarah and Tom decided to move for his job? What if the twins grew up and moved away for college? I'd be starting over again, alone in a city I'd chosen for someone else. No, this time I needed to choose for myself. The day after accepting the offer, I found myself driving to the small art gallery where I volunteered twice a month. It had started as a way to fill empty hours after retirement, but had become one of the few places where I felt truly seen. Eleanor. Margot, the gallery director, greeted me with genuine warmth. At 72, she was a force of nature. Silver hair cropped short, always dressed in flowing garments adorned with her own handmade jewelry. Perfect timing. Help me hang the new Sandoval pieces. For the next hour, we carefully positioned the vibrant paintings, stepping back to assess each placement, moving them inches this way and that until they looked just right. This was why I loved gallery work. The precision combined with aesthetics, the quiet concentration, the satisfaction of creating the perfect space for art to shine. "Heard your house sold," Margot said as we stepped back to admire our work. In a small neighborhood like ours, news traveled fast. "Congratulations. Where are you off to next?" "That's the question, isn't it?" I sank onto one of the gallery benches. "Everyone assumes I'll move near my daughter in Seattle, but I'm not sure that's right for me." Margot sat beside me, her chunky bracelets clinking softly. "What is right for you, Eleanor? If you could do anything, go anywhere. What would you choose?" The question caught me off guard. For so long, my choices had been practical, responsible, centered around my children's needs and futures. What did I want just for me? "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never really thought about it that way." Margot studied me, her artist's eyes seeing more than most. "You know, I spent 40 years teaching art to high school students in Cleveland. I was a good teacher, respected, secure. Then my husband died. My son moved to Australia, and suddenly I was 65 with nothing. Holding me in place, she gestured around the gallery. So I sold everything, moved to Chicago where I knew exactly no one, and opened this place." I stared at her, trying to imagine having that kind of courage. "Weren't you scared?" "Terrified," she laughed, but also exhilarated. For the first time, I was living entirely on my terms. She leaned closer, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "Want to know a secret? My son was furious. Thought I should move to Australia, help with his kids, but I knew if I did that, I'd just be transplanting my old life to a new location. I'd still be fitting myself around other people's needs." Her words struck a chord so deep I almost gasped. That was exactly what I'd been planning to do in Seattle. Transplant my old patterns to a new location. "So, what are you passionate about, Eleanor Hansen?" Margot asked. "What makes you lose track of time? What have you always wanted to try but never had the chance?" I thought about it. Really thought, maybe for the first time. "I love working here," I said slowly. "I love being around art, arranging things, creating beautiful spaces." I hesitated, then shared something I'd never told anyone. Sometimes I rearrange my house, move furniture, rehang pictures, change the whole flow of a room. I can spend an entire day doing it, and it feels like minutes. Margot's eyes lit up. "Interior design, spatial aesthetics. You have a natural talent for it. I've seen how you transform this gallery." "It's just a hobby," I protested. "So was painting for Grandma Moses until she was 78, Margot countered. "Age is just a number, Eleanor. The question is, what are you going to do with the time you have left?" Her question stayed with me as I drove home, as I heated up leftovers for dinner, as I sat alone in my living room that now felt like borrowed space. What was I going to do with the rest of my life? My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then responded, "I'm here." The phone rang almost immediately. "The house sold?" He didn't bother with hello. "Mrs. Abernathy next door texted Vanessa to congratulate us. She thought we were the ones buying it." Sighed. Neighborhood gossip worked in mysterious ways. "Yes, I accepted an offer yesterday. Closing is in 30 days. Were you going to tell me?" The hurt in his voice was genuine, which only irritated me more. "Of course I was, Michael. When things were finalized, just like you would have eventually told me about your plans to stay in Boston after graduation." The parallel wasn't lost on him. He sighed heavily. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have talked to you about that sooner. It's just, everything's been happening so fast with the job offers and Vanessa's family's connections. Ah, yes, the Collins family connections. The golden ticket he couldn't resist. It's fine, I said, not wanting to rehash old arguments. You've made your choice, and I respect it. Now I'm making mine. By selling the house you were going to give me. The accusation in his voice made my temper flare. Yes. Because giving you that house was part of a future that isn't happening. I struggled to keep my voice steady. A future where you moved back to Chicago, where we lived close to each other, where I was a part of your life. That's not the path you've chosen. Silence stretched between us, taut with unspoken feelings. So, where will you go? He asked finally, his voice smaller. I don't know yet, I admitted. I'm still figuring that out. Mom, about graduation, he started, but I cut him off. It's okay, Michael, I understand. It's an important networking opportunity for you. The words tasted bitter, but I forced them out. I hope it's everything you want it to be. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my living room, Margot's question echoing in my mind. What are you going to do with the time you have left? On impulse, I opened my laptop and typed interior design courses into the search bar. The results surprised me. Certificate programs, associate degrees, online courses for all skill levels. I clicked on one offered by a design school in New York, reading through the curriculum with growing excitement. New York. The thought came unbidden but landed with surprising weight. I'd visited once decades ago when Michael was competing in a national debate tournament. While he was busy with competitions, I'd wandered the city alone, mesmerized by the energy, the architecture, the endless possibilities. I clicked on another tab and searched for apartments in New York City. The prices made me wince, but with the profit from my house, I could afford a small place, at least for a while, long enough to take some classes, see if this passion could become something more. The idea was utterly impractical, completely out of character. I'd never lived in a big city, never lived alone in a place where I knew no one. My practical side listed all the reasons it was a terrible idea: the cost, the distance from my children, the challenges of starting over at 64. But another voice, one that sounded suspiciously like Margot's, whispered, "If not now, when?" I stared at the images of New York apartments, at the design school's course catalog, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The flutter of possibility, of a future I was choosing entirely for myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Found another great condo near us, sending link. I closed my laptop, suddenly certain I wouldn't be moving to Seattle. For the first time in decades, I was going to surprise everyone, including myself. 3. Weeks after selling my house, I boarded a plane to New York City with 2 suitcases and a carry-on. The rest of my belongings were either in storage, donated, or packed in boxes headed for Sarah's basement in Seattle. I'd rented a furnished apartment in Brooklyn for 3 months, long enough to take a summer-intensive certificate program in interior design and decide if New York was where I wanted to rebuild my life. You've lost your mind, Sarah had said when I told her my plans, half joking, half serious. New York City at your age, alone? What's wrong with my age? I'd countered, surprising myself with my defensiveness. Nothing. I just meant it's a big change. New York is intense. Wouldn't you rather be somewhere familiar, near family? I'd almost wavered then, seeing the genuine concern in my daughter's eyes during our video call. But then I remembered how quickly Michael had rearranged his life around Vanessa's family, how easily he'd excluded me when it suited him. I couldn't build my future on the shifting sands of my children's choices. I need to do this, Sarah, I'd said firmly. I've spent my whole adult life being sensible, practical, putting everyone else first. Just this once, I want to follow my own dream, however crazy it might seem. She'd relented eventually, extracting promises that I'd call daily and come to Seattle for Thanksgiving. Michael's reaction had been more complicated, a mixture of guilt, confusion, and what seemed like genuine hurt that I was moving even farther away from him. But what about after my wedding next year? He'd asked. Vanessa and I might want to start a family soon after. Don't you want to be near your grandchildren? The irony had been almost too much. You're planning your life in Boston, I'd reminded him gently. I'm planning mine in New York. We'll figure out how to make it work, just like you expected me to figure out how to make your choices work for me. Now, as the plane began its descent into JFK, I peered out the window at the sprawling expanse of the city below. What was I doing? I'd never lived anywhere but the Midwest. I'd only visited New York once, 20 years ago. At 64, I was starting over in one of the most demanding cities in the world. Fear and exhilaration battled in my chest as I collected my luggage and found the car service I'd arranged. The driver, a cheerful man named Eduardo, chattered about neighborhoods and restaurants as we crossed the bridge into Brooklyn, but I barely heard him. I was too busy staring out the window, trying to absorb the sheer scale and energy of my new temporary home. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a brownstone in Park Slope, a neighborhood I'd chosen after hours of research for its safety, walkability, and proximity to the subway. The owner, a professor on sabbatical in Europe, had agreed to a 3-month summer rental that stretched my budget but felt worth it. "Here we are, Mrs. Hanson," Eduardo announced, pulling up to a tree-lined street that looked almost peaceful compared to the Manhattan skyline we'd just left behind. "Welcome to Brooklyn." The apartment was smaller than it had appeared. In photos, but charming. High ceilings, wooden floors, built-in bookshelves, and a tiny balcony overlooking a courtyard garden. The furnishings were eclectic but tasteful, clearly chosen by someone with an artistic sensibility. I set down my bags and moved slowly through the space, already mentally rearranging furniture, envisioning different color schemes, imagining how I might transform it if it were mine. This is what I'm here for, I reminded myself. This passion for spaces and how they make people feel. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Landed safely? Apartment?" I sent a quick reply with a photo of the living room. "All good. Brooklyn is beautiful. Talk tomorrow." Then I silenced my phone and stepped out onto the tiny balcony. The evening air was warm, carrying the sounds of the city. Distant traffic, neighbors talking, music from an open window somewhere down the block. So different from the quiet suburbs I'd left behind. "Hello, New York," I whispered. "I'm Eleanor Hanson, and I'm starting over." The design school was housed in a converted warehouse in Manhattan's Garment District. On my first day of class, I arrived 30 minutes early, heart pounding as if I were 18 instead of 64. I'd dressed carefully in black pants, a crisp white blouse, and comfortable flats. My silver hair freshly trimmed into the bob I'd worn for years. The classroom gradually filled with students, most in their 20s and 30s, though I was relieved to spot a few faces that appeared to be closer to my age. The instructor, Caroline Mendez, was a striking woman in her 50s with an impressive portfolio that included celebrity homes and boutique hotels. "Welcome to Spatial Concepts and Design Fundamentals," she began, her eyes sweeping the room. "Look around you. Every person here has a unique vision, a unique perspective. That diversity is what makes design exciting. We're not here to teach you rules. We're here to help you discover your own design voice." Her words sent a thrill through me. My own design voice. Did I have one? After decades of making practical choices, of putting my children's needs before my own, did I even know what I liked anymore? We started with an exercise, creating digital mood boards that represented our personal aesthetic. While the younger students navigated the design software with ease, I fumbled, frustrated by my technological limitations. The woman next to me, probably in her late 40s, leaned over. "First time using this program?" she asked sympathetically. "First time using any design software," I admitted. "I'm more of a physical cut-and-paste person." She smiled. "I'm Grace, former corporate lawyer, current design school rookie. Let me show you a shortcut." By lunchtime, Grace and I had become allies in what felt like foreign territory. We grabbed sandwiches at a nearby deli and found a small park where we could eat and talk. "So, what brings you to design school?" she asked, unwrapping her sandwich. "Midlife crisis like me?" I laughed. "Late life rebellion, maybe? My kids are grown. I sold my house. I decided it was finally time to do something just for me." "Kids supportive?" I hesitated. My daughter's concerned, but trying to understand. My son. I trailed off, not sure how to explain the complicated situation with Michael. "Ah," Grace nodded knowingly. "Not on board. I get it. My daughter thinks I've lost my mind, leaving a perfectly good law career to play with furniture, as she puts it. Why did you make the change? I asked, curious about this woman who seemed so confident about her dramatic career shift. She looked thoughtful. I spent 30 years helping corporations navigate legal loopholes, made good money, but never once felt like I was making anyone's life better. One day, I realized I had maybe 20 or 30 good years left, and I was spending them doing something that didn't bring me or anyone else joy. She gestured to her design materials. This makes spaces beautiful. This makes people's daily lives better in a tangible way. Why wouldn't I want to spend my remaining time doing that? Her words resonated deeply. Wasn't that what I wanted too? To create beauty, to transform spaces, to use this talent I'd kept tucked away for decades. That evening, as I rode the subway back to Brooklyn, I observed my fellow passengers with new eyes. Each person represented a different story, a different path. The young woman sketching in a notebook, the elderly man reading a paperback with a magnifying glass, the teenagers laughing over something on a phone. All of us in transition, moving from one place to another, one moment to the next. For the first time since arriving in New York, I felt a sense of belonging. Not because I knew the city, I was still getting lost daily, but because I was finally on a path that felt true to who I really was. Back at the apartment, I found 3 missed calls from Michael and a text that simply read, "Need to talk to you. Important." I sighed, the bubble of contentment deflating slightly. Whatever crisis he was facing would have to wait until morning. Tonight belonged to me, to the exhilarating feeling of being exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. I made myself a simple dinner and sat on the tiny balcony, watching the lights come on across Brooklyn as darkness fell. In the morning, I would call Michael. I would listen to whatever problem he needed to share. I would be his mother, as I always had been, but I would also be Eleanor Hansen, design student, New Yorker, temporary or otherwise, woman charting her own course. For the first time in decades, those identities felt equally important, equally valid. My phone buzzed with another text from Michael. "Seriously, Mom, it's important." I picked up the phone, then set it down again. Important to him, perhaps. But tonight I had more pressing priorities, like completing the design concept that was due tomorrow, figuring out the subway route to my weekend workshop, and mapping out which furniture stores I wanted to visit on Saturday. His crisis would keep until morning. Tonight, my new life was calling. I called Michael first thing the next morning, coffee in hand, bracing myself for whatever emergency had prompted his urgent texts. "Finally," he answered on the first ring. "I've been trying to reach you all night." I was in class, then I was tired, I said, refusing to apologize. "What's so important?" He took a deep breath. "It's about graduation. I talked to Vanessa's father and he said he can get you a ticket after all, so you can come." I nearly dropped my coffee mug. After all the hurt, all the changes I'd set in motion, now he was casually inviting me back in. "I see," I said carefully. "And what changed?" "What do you mean? I thought you'd be happy." He sounded genuinely confused. "You wanted to come to graduation and now you can." "Michael," I said slowly, "you told me there wasn't room for me, that it was more important to have Vanessa's family's connections there. You made me feel like I was an embarrassment, someone who didn't fit into your new life, and now you're surprised I'm not jumping for joy at this last-minute invitation." Silence stretched between us. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Mrs. Abernathy mentioned something about you moving to New York. I thought she must be confused, but then Sarah confirmed it. Is that true?" "Yes. I'm in Brooklyn now. I'm taking a certificate program in interior design." "Interior design? In New York?" He sounded bewildered. "For how long?" "The program is 3 months. After that, I'll decide whether to stay or try somewhere else." "But," he started, then stopped. "I don't understand. This isn't like you, Mom. Moving across the country on a whim, design school. What about your friends? Your life in Chicago?" I sipped my coffee, gathering my thoughts. "My life in Chicago was built around you and Sarah. Now Sarah's settled in Seattle, and you're building your future in Boston." It's time I built something for myself. So this is about punishing me, he said, his voice hardening. Because I couldn't get you into graduation. No, Michael. This is about me finally recognizing that I've spent my entire adult life arranging everything around what other people need. I raised you and Sarah alone. I worked jobs I didn't love to provide for you. I stayed in Chicago because that's where you were in school. Every major decision I've made for the past 35 years has been influenced by what would be best for my children. And that's bad? He sounded genuinely perplexed. It's not bad. It's what parents do. But there comes a point where it has to stop, where I have to start living for myself. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. When you decided to build your life in Boston around Vanessa's family, when you decided I didn't fit into your graduation plans, you helped me see that. I'd been holding on to a future that wasn't going to happen. So you're not coming to graduation even though I got you a ticket. The hurt in his voice made my resolve waver, but only for a moment. I have class that day. I've already paid for the program, and it's non-refundable. You could skip one class. This is my law school graduation, Mom. Harvard Law. I know exactly what it is, Michael. I'm the one who helped you apply to law schools, who remortgaged my house to help with your first year's tuition, who celebrated every accomplishment with you along the way. I kept my voice steady despite the emotion rising in my chest. But you made it clear this was Vanessa's family's moment, not mine. You can't undo that just because you feel guilty now. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with things we'd never said to each other. So that's it? He finally asked. You're just moving on? New city? New life? Forget your family? I'm not forgetting anyone, I corrected him. I'm just adding something to my life that's just for me. Is that really so hard to understand? Apparently, it was. The conversation ended with Michael still hurt and confused, and me feeling both guilty and oddly liberated. I wasn't being cruel. I was simply establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. Later that day, during our lunch break, I told Grace about the conversation. Good for you, she said, spearing a piece of salad with her fork. It's always hardest with the first one. The first what? The first time you disappoint someone you love by choosing yourself, she explained. After that, it gets easier. Not because you care less, but because you start to see that the world doesn't end when you put yourself first occasionally. I considered this as we walked back to class. Was that what I was doing? Choosing myself over my son? The guilt that had been my constant companion for decades whispered that I was being selfish, that good mothers always put their children first, no matter how old those children became. But another voice, newer and still tentative, suggested that perhaps the greatest gift I could give my children was the example of a mother who valued herself enough to pursue her own dreams. That afternoon's class focused on color theory and its psychological impact on spaces. As Caroline discussed how different hues affected mood and perception, I found myself thinking about the emotional tones of my relationships. The warm comfort of my connection with Sarah, the increasingly cool distance with Michael, the vibrant possibility of my new friendships in New York. Colors don't exist in isolation, Caroline was saying. They interact with each other, change each other, just like people. After class, I decided to walk part of the way home, taking in the city that was becoming less foreign with each passing day. New York in late spring was a riot of contrasts. Sleek skyscrapers and crumbling brownstones, luxury boutiques and street vendors, harried business people and leisurely tourists. Somehow, all these disparate elements coexisted, creating a whole that was greater than its parts. Could the same be true of my life? Could I be both a devoted mother and a woman pursuing her own path? Both a Midwesterner at heart and a New Yorker in the making? As I approached my subway stop, my phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. Michael called me, she said without preamble when I answered. He's pretty upset, Mom. I sighed, descending the subway stairs. I know. He wants me to drop everything and come to his graduation now that he's decided I can be included. After all. And you said no. It wasn't a question. I said no, I confirmed, swiping my Metro card. I've paid for this program. I've committed to it. I can't just abandon it because Michael has suddenly decided I'm allowed at his graduation after all. The train rumbled into the station, drowning out whatever Sarah said next. Hold on, I told her, boarding and finding a seat. Subway's loud, she repeated when I could hear again. I said that I understand why you're hurt, but is this really worth damaging your relationship with Michael? I'm not damaging anything, Sarah. I'm just not arranging my life around his changing whims anymore. The train lurched forward and I steadied myself against the seat. Would you expect Tom to cancel an important work commitment because you suddenly wanted him at an event you'd previously told him not to attend? She was quiet for a moment. That's different. Why? Because he's your husband and I'm just your mother? No, because... She trailed off, then sighed. I don't know. It just feels different. It feels different because we've all accepted that mothers should sacrifice everything for their children, no matter how old those children are. The words came from somewhere deep inside me, a truth I'd never fully articulated, even to myself. But that's not healthy, Sarah. Not for me, and not for you and Michael either. Another silence, this one more thoughtful. So, you're really staying in New York for the whole summer at least. I watched the dark tunnel, rushing past the windows. I'm really enjoying the program, and I've made a friend. Another woman starting over. It feels right being here. I've never heard you sound like this before, Sarah said, a note of wonder in her voice. You sound, I don't know, different. I feel different, I admitted. For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about what comes next. I'm learning things, meeting people, experiencing a whole new city. The train pulled into my stop, and I made my way to the exit, phone still pressed to my ear. As I emerged, onto the Brooklyn street, the evening sun cast long shadows between the buildings. I'm proud of you, Mom, Sarah said unexpectedly. I don't entirely understand what you're doing, but I'm proud of you for doing it. Her words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot. Just promise me something, she asked. Don't cut Michael off completely. He's hurt and confused, but he loves you. Give him time to adjust to this new version of you. I will, I promised, blinking away the tears. I'm not trying to punish him. I'm just trying to find out who... I am beyond being your mother. After we hung up, I walked the remaining blocks to my apartment, thinking about Sarah's words. This new version of you. Was that what was happening? Was I becoming someone new, or was I simply uncovering a self that had been buried beneath decades of motherhood and responsibility? As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I realized I was looking forward to the evening ahead, reviewing my class notes, working on my first design project, perhaps calling Grace to discuss our weekend plans to visit a design showcase in Soho. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't waiting for a call from my children to give meaning to my day. I was creating that meaning myself. It felt terrifying. It felt wonderful. It felt finally like freedom. The morning of Michael's graduation arrived with a text from Sarah. Thinking of you today. Love you, Mom. I stared at the message, a complicated knot of emotions tightening in my chest. Today in Boston, my son would walk across a stage in his cap and gown, receiving the degree he'd worked so hard for, and I wouldn't be there to see it. Despite my resolve, despite all my rational arguments about boundaries and self-respect, the mother in me ached at missing this milestone. I typed back a quick response to Sarah. Give him my love. Tell him I'm proud of him. My design class that day focused on spatial planning for small urban apartments, a topic that would have seemed irrelevant to my life just 2 months ago, but now felt intensely practical. As Caroline guided us through exercises in maximizing functionality without sacrificing aesthetics, I found myself fully engaged, the graduation ceremony receding from my thoughts. You're getting good at this, Grace commented as we reviewed each other's floor plans during the practical portion of class. This corner solution is brilliant. Thanks, I said, surprised by how much her approval meant to me. In just a few weeks, Grace had become not just a classmate, but a true friend, someone who understood exactly what it meant to rebuild your identity in your 60s. Any plans for this weekend? she asked as we packed up our materials at the end of class. I was thinking of checking out that new exhibit at the Design Museum. I'd love to, but I can't on Saturday, I said. I've got a video call with Sarah and the twins. Sunday would work, though. Grace nodded, understanding without needing explanation the delicate balance I was trying to maintain, creating my new life while preserving the important parts of my old one. As we left the building, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Hey, I said, stepping away from the flow of students exiting the building. Congratulations, graduate. Thanks, he replied, his voice tight with what sounded like nervousness. The ceremony just ended. How was it? Good, long, hot. He paused. I missed you. The simple statement caught me off guard, piercing straight through my carefully constructed defenses. I missed being there, I admitted, my voice softening. Listen, Mom. He took a deep breath. I'm in the city. New York, I mean. I flew in right after the ceremony. What? I stopped walking, causing a businessman to swerve around me with an annoyed grunt. Why? What about the reception with Vanessa's family? I told them I had something more important to do. There was a new firmness in his voice, one I wasn't used to hearing. Can we meet somewhere? I need to talk to you in person. 15. Minutes later, I was sitting in a coffee shop near my school, watching through the window as my son approached. He looked both familiar and strange in his graduation suit, his face more serious than I remembered. Mom, he said as he slid into the seat across from me, the single word carrying a weight of complicated emotion. Michael. I resisted the urge to reach across and straighten his slightly crooked tie. I'm surprised to see you. Yeah, well, he fidgeted with a napkin. It was kind of a last-minute decision. The barista delivered my tea and his coffee, giving us a moment to study each other. He looked tired, I thought, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from emotional strain rather than physical exertion. So, I said after the barista left, you missed your big networking opportunity. With Vanessa's father's colleagues, he winced. I deserve that. But actually, that's part of why I'm here. He took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of thinking since you moved to New York, about choices and consequences and what really matters. I waited, unsure where this was heading. When you sold the house you were going to give to us, it was like a wake-up call. He looked down at his coffee, then back at me. I realized I'd been making all these plans, arranging my entire future, without really considering what I was giving up, who I was giving up. Michael, No, please let me finish. His voice was earnest, more vulnerable than I'd heard it in years. The truth is, I got caught up in Vanessa's family's world. The connections, the opportunities, the lifestyle. It was seductive, and I started making choices based on what would impress them. What would secure my place in that world? He took a sip of his coffee, grimacing slightly at the heat. When I told you not to come to graduation, it wasn't because I was ashamed of you. It was because I was ashamed of myself, of how easily I'd been willing to set aside everything you'd done for me, everything we'd been through together, to curry favor with the Collinses. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the defensive Michael I'd argued with on the phone. This was someone more reflective, more mature. After you moved here, Vanessa and I had some long talks, he continued, twisting the coffee cup in his hands. About values, about family, about the kind of life we want to build together, and I realized I've been letting her parents shape too much of our future. And what does Vanessa think about that? I asked carefully. A small smile appeared. She agrees. She's been feeling the pressure too. Just didn't know how to push back. Her parents can be overwhelming. I noticed, I said dryly, remembering the engagement party. So, we've made some decisions. He straightened, meeting my eyes directly. We're not taking the job in Boston. I've accepted a position with a public interest law firm in Chicago instead. Chicago, I repeated, stunned. But what about all those connections? The prestigious firm? It would have been a great opportunity, he acknowledged. But at what cost? I'd be working 80-hour weeks on corporate mergers, barely seeing Vanessa, completely disconnected from everything and everyone I care about. He shook his head. That's not the life I want. That's not who I want to be. I sat back, trying to absorb this complete reversal. And Vanessa's on board with this? She is. She's actually excited about it. She's been offered a position teaching at Northwestern, art history. It's what she really wanted to do all along, but her parents had pushed her toward museum administration because it was more prestigious. He made air quotes around the word. So, you're moving back to Chicago, I said slowly. To the house I just sold. His expression fell slightly. Yeah, about that. I know I have no right to ask, but is there any way? The sale closes next week, Michael. The new owners are a lovely young couple expecting their first baby. I can't back out now, even if I wanted to. No, of course not. He looked embarrassed. I wasn't thinking. We'll find our own place. That's not why I came. Then why did you? He reached across the table, tentatively taking my hand. To apologize. To tell you I understand now what you've been trying to say, and to ask if it's not too late for us to find a new way forward. One where we're both living authentic lives, but still connected. The sincerity in his eyes brought a lump to my throat. This was the son I'd raised. Thoughtful, capable of growth, brave enough to change course when he recognized he was heading in the wrong direction. It's not too late, I said, squeezing his hand. It's never too late for that. Relief washed over his face. Good. That's good. He hesitated. So tell me about this design program. Is it what you hoped it would be? For the next hour, we talked, really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. I told him about my classes, about Grace, about my growing love for New York. He shared more details about his and Vanessa's decision to chart their own path, their excitement about returning to Chicago, their plans for the future. We're looking at September for the wedding, he said as we prepared to leave the coffee shop. Nothing elaborate, not the society event the Collinses were planning, just something simple, meaningful, and we were hoping, yes, that you might help us find a venue, with your new design expertise if you're willing. The request, so simple, so ordinary, yet so meaningful in its acknowledgement of my new identity, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I'd be honored, I said, blinking them away. Outside the coffee shop, we paused on the busy sidewalk, pedestrians streaming, around us like a river around stones. So, what happens now? Michael asked. With you, I mean. Will you stay in New York after your program ends? I looked around at the city that had been my home for just a few weeks, but already felt familiar in a way I hadn't expected. I don't know yet. I'm keeping my options open. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Whatever you decide, I just want you to know I'm proud of you, Mom, for taking this leap, for showing me that it's never too late to reinvent yourself. As I hugged my son goodbye on that New York street corner, I felt something shift and settle inside me. Not an ending or a beginning, but a realignment. We were finding a new balance, he and I. Not the old pattern of mother and child, nor the complete separation I'd feared, but something healthier, more equal. I watched him walk away, this grown man who was my son, and felt a quiet joy rise within me. Not because he had finally seen my value, though that was gratifying, but because I had finally seen it myself. 3 months flew by in a blur of classes, design projects, weekend explorations, of New York and growing friendships. My certificate program was coming to an end, and with it the lease on my Brooklyn apartment. The question that had been hovering in the background now demanded an answer. What next? You could always stay, Grace suggested as we sat in a small cafe near the design school, reviewing our final portfolio presentations. Caroline mentioned she has connections at some of the boutique design firms in the city. With your talent, you could get your foot in the door. I sipped my tea, considering the possibility. New York had surprised me in so many ways. Its energy had revitalized me. Its diversity had expanded my perspective. Its challenges had strengthened my resolve. I'd made real friends here, established a routine, even found my favorite neighborhood bakery. Or, Grace continued, watching my expression, you could come back for visits. My guest room is always open to you. I'll definitely be back, I assured her, no matter what I decide. The truth was, I'd been contemplating my options for weeks. Sarah had renewed her invitation to Seattle, sweetening the deal with news of a lovely condo available in her neighborhood. Michael and Vanessa, now settled in their new Chicago apartment, had suggested I might want to be part of their city's vibrant design community. And then there was the possibility of staying in New York, building on the foundation I'd established here. Each choice had its appeal. Each represented a different version of my future self. That evening, as I packed up my design materials in the suddenly emptier apartment, my phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. Hey, I answered, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I continued sorting through papers. How's Chicago? Good. Different than I remembered, but good. His voice sounded lighter these days, unburdened by the need to impress. How's the packing going? Slowly. It's amazing how much stuff I've accumulated in just 3 months. So, have you decided yet where you're going next? I sat down the stack of design magazines I'd been organizing. Not officially. I'm still weighing my options. Well, I have a new option for you to consider, he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. Remember how you helped Vanessa and me find that perfect little wedding venue last month? Of course. I'd spent a weekend in Chicago with them, touring potential locations and finally discovering a charming historic building with beautiful architectural details that we all agreed would be perfect for their September wedding. Owner was really impressed with your suggestions for how to arrange the space. Like, really impressed? Michael paused dramatically. She wants to talk to you about consulting on some renovations they're planning. Consulting? I repeated, surprised. You mean professionally? Yes, professionally, as in she would pay you for your expertise. He sounded pleased with himself. I may have shown her your portfolio and mentioned your certificate from the New York design program. Michael, I wasn't sure whether to be embarrassed or grateful for his initiative. What? It's networking, Mom. Isn't that what you've been teaching me about lately? Making authentic connections based on mutual respect and shared interests. I had to laugh at hearing my own words repeated back to me. Touché. So what do you think? It could be a foot in the door. Chicago has a strong design community, and with your hospital administration background, plus the new design training, you'd have a unique perspective for healthcare and hospitality spaces. The idea was appealing. Chicago was familiar territory, a place where I had history and connections. With Michael and Vanessa there, I'd have family nearby, but not be dependent on them for my social life or sense of purpose. I'll think about it, I promised. I'm keeping all my options open until after graduation next week. After we hung up, I stepped out onto my small balcony one last time, watching the Brooklyn sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Whatever I decided, these months in New York had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. The certificate program's graduation ceremony was nothing like Michael's Harvard Law event, just a simple reception in the school's gallery space where our final projects were displayed for friends, family, and industry professionals to view. But as I stood beside my design board, explaining my concepts to interested observers, I felt a pride that rivaled anything I'd experienced vicariously through my children's accomplishments. This is really exceptional work, Eleanor, Caroline said, stopping by my display. Especially for someone with no formal background in design. You have a natural talent for spatial relationships and a very sophisticated color sense. Thank you, I said, warmed by her praise. It's been an incredible experience. Have you thought about what's next for you? Professionally, I mean. I hesitated. I have some possibilities I'm considering. Nothing definite yet. She nodded thoughtfully. Well, if New York is among those possibilities, I'd like you to call this woman. She handed me a business card. She runs a small design firm specializing in residential renovations for older buildings. They're looking for someone with fresh ideas who can also relate well to clients. I think you'd be a perfect fit. I stared at the card, a new possibility suddenly materializing alongside the others I'd been considering. Think about it, Caroline advised. You have something special to offer, Eleanor. Don't underestimate that. As the evening progressed, I circulated around the room, admiring my classmates' work, exchanging contact information, making promises to stay in touch that I actually intended to keep. When it was time to leave, Grace and I shared a tight hug. "This isn't goodbye," she insisted. "Just see you later. I expect detailed reports on whatever you decide to do next." "You'll be the first to know," I promised. Back at my apartment, surrounded by packed boxes and empty walls, I spread out the tangible representations of my options. Sarah's information about the Seattle condo, Michael's notes about the Chicago consulting opportunity, Caroline's business card for the New York design firm, and a few other possibilities I'd researched on my own. For a moment, I felt overwhelmed by the choices before me. Just months ago, my future had seemed predictable, my path clear. Now everything was open, uncertain, full of both possibility and risk. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Just checking in. Love you, Mom." Then another from Michael. "No pressure, but Chicago. Misses you." And finally, one from Grace. "Whatever you decide, make sure it brings you joy." I smiled at these messages from the people who cared about me, each supporting me in their own way, none trying to control my decision. What a change from just a few months ago, when I'd felt trapped by expectations and invisible in my own life. In the quiet of my nearly empty apartment, I made my decision. Not based on who needed me or what others expected, but on what felt right for this next chapter of my life. It wasn't about running away from my past or my family, nor was it about proving a point. It was simply about honoring the person I had become and the person I still wanted to be. 6 months later, I stood in the reception area of a small but elegant design studio in Chicago's West Loop, making final adjustments to a display of fabric samples and material boards. A client who was approximately my age and appeared both optimistic and apprehensive stepped through the door as the bell above it rung. I gave her a hearty "Welcome to Hanson Interiors" greeting. "My name is Eleanor. What can I do for you today?" She sat down in the chair I provided and stated, "I'm downsizing. Now that my kids are grown, I'm stumbling around in a house that's too big for me alone. Although the apartment I discovered is beautiful, it needs some remodeling to make it feel like home." I understood precisely what she meant, so I nodded. "Tell me about yourself, your priorities, and your way of life. A house should be a reflection of who you are, not just how you seem in pictures." I had the same kind of thrill that had come to define my new profession as she started to tell her story. The difficulty of transforming someone's ambitions and aspirations into tangible space and designing inspiring and nurturing surroundings. That idea was reflected in my own tiny apartment, which was just 15 minutes away. It was furnished with items that I cherished, maximizing both aesthetics and functionality, and had enough room for visiting grandkids, including Sarah's twins, and ideally, Michael and Vanessa's kids in the future. I hadn't chosen to travel back to Chicago in order to hide in my comfort zone. Building something fresh on a base I already knew had been the goal. With 3 regular clients and a number of consulting projects, including the wedding venue that had served as my launchpad, my little design firm was expanding steadily. Vanessa and Michael lived close by, but not too close, and our connection developed into something more mature and balanced. Most Sunday nights we ate supper together, sometimes at their house, sometimes at mine, and sometimes at eateries we wanted to check out. Every few months, Sarah and her family came to visit, bringing joy and commotion to my flat. And in order to maintain my ties to the city that had assisted me in rediscovering who I was, I spent a long weekend in New York every 6 weeks or so, staying with Grace and seeing galleries and design showrooms. I saw in my new client the same mixture of excitement and trepidation I had experienced when I stood on the precipice of my own reinvention, as I listened to her outline the life she saw in her new place. She wasn't only remodeling a condominium. Her future was being reimagined. Echoing my own misgivings, she admitted, "It feels self-indulgent to spend this time and money just on making my own space nicer." I reassured her, drawing on my own experience, that building a home that supports the life you want to live is not self-indulgent. It is a self-respecting act. I had a great feeling of satisfaction that evening as I made my way home through the well-known streets of Chicago, the city I had purposefully picked this time. It had not been an easy or uncomplicated voyage. There had been difficult talks, terrible times, and difficult decisions. But every step had taken me one step closer to the life I now cherished, a life that I had created for myself, on my own terms, and with my own hands. My son had expressed his preference that I not attend his graduation, and I had discovered the secret to my own freedom by selling the house I had intended to give him. Not from my relatives, but more from the restrictions I had put on myself. Sometimes setting an example of our own bravery to change is the best gift we can give to people we care about. I'm living proof that it's never too late to take back your life if you've ever given up your aspirations for someone else. What dream have you placed on hold that should be woken up? Tell me in the comments. It's possible that your second chapter is the most exquisite one to yet.